he's shooting at me again. You know? So I turn around and I see someone kind of duck behind this car, and I do one more shot to keep them down, and now he's pulling up in his car. So I said, hey, get out and I'll drive. And he's like, just get in, Rock, I'm driving. And I'm like, and he said, I'm not pulling over, just get in. I said, okay. So I jumped in the car, and when I got in, he had thrown his handgun on the passenger seat. So now when I got in the car, whoop, first thing I did is swoop that handgun, and I got his now too. So I'm looking down at the car, and I go to eject my clip and start to reload, right? Well, when I do that, I still got a round chambered in the barrel. So I'm going to pull it back to eject that shell. Well, as I start to do that, adrenaline, my hands are sweating and all that kind of stuff, I go to pull it back and pow! It shoots that round through the floorboard, probably about this far from his foot. Now, I just used that as an exclamation point on what I was telling him. I said, see there, you ain't pulled over. If you get red lighted, I'll shoot you, push you out, and I'll drive. You know? Well, at the time in his mind, Dan, he's like, Ephesians 2:13, this guy's out there. You know, so I look down in the car, and now I got the clip out, and I'm starting to reload the bullet. And remember, I have his gun too. And when I looked down into the car, we were already leaving the parking lot of the nightclub. Now, I'm looking down, I'm reloading this, and when I look back up, what he had done is he left the parking lot of the nightclub and got on the freeway. That's the last time I'd been looking out. Then he went down the freeway and got off at the next exit and looped right around and came right back into the parking lot of the car. So when I look up, I'm seeing this thing, it looks like a washer. You guys know what a washer is, like a nut in a washer? I see what looks like this silver washer pointed at me, and there's people everywhere, and I hear, put your hands where I can see them. And obviously he stopped this, and here's this washer in front of us. So I take the guns, and I go like this, without bending over, and I just slide them under the seat. And now these guys are on the door, and they're grabbing us and pulling us out and slamming my face against the car and all that kind of stuff. And because that was a stainless steel shotgun that he was pointing at me. Now, you know, they beat us up a little bit and that kind of stuff, and threw us in because they're all, you know, had a bad mouth, and I was calling this cop all kinds of stuff. So deservedly I got beat up, you know. But so then when they got me to the station, I grew up where I was raised that you always keep your mouth shut. Okay? And so when I got there, I'm keeping my mouth shut, and this individual is telling them, you know what, I have a family, I have kids and a job, and it was him that started shooting at me. The whole thing could have been avoided if he wouldn't have started shooting at me, which was not the truth, but I wasn't saying any different. So this individual, he ended up, and here's a funny thing in the law system. When you leave the scene of a crime, you can return to it. It counts as 2 counts. So, because we had shot up the nightclub, and because I left and returned, I had 2 counts, attempted murder is what they originally had charged me with. And the original charge for my co-defendant was allowing me to attempt murder. You know? So, anyhow, that's the charges I was facing. At that time, so they throw me in jail and that kind of stuff. And I don't know if any of you have them here, but you've seen those Gideon's Little New Testaments? Well, thank God for prison and jail chaplains. Because this chaplain had come along and he would walk down the cell block, and if anybody wanted a Bible, he would give you a Bible. I was like, cool, I'll take one of those, preacher. And he's like, here you go. And so he gives me this Bible. And you know, the Lord already knows this. So, you know, at that time I'm going, ooh, look at these pages. Cool. So for me, that chaplain had given me a package of rolling papers. Because I started using those pages. Hey, come on, guys. That's one way to get the word in you. So, and anyhow, at that time I'd smoked my way through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and halfway through John. Now, inadvertently in that time that I had, remember, I was my transgressions. And the Lord does not give up on us. He continues to woo us. He continues to try to call us back. Because, Jeremiah, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. I consecrated you, which means to be set apart for a specific calling or purpose. Each one of you in here today have a purpose and calling on your life. If you do not know what it is, Matthew 7 says, ask. Ask Him first. He will tell you. Just a little tidbit. Jesus says that my sheep know my voice. And so, you know what? I pray there is nobody in here that is not familiar with the Lord's voice. If you are not, then let's get that dealt with today, again, before you leave. Because, you know what? When you're praying, you ask anything of the Lord. And He says, you know what? If your kid comes to you and asks you for a piece of bread, are you going to give him a stone? If he asks for a piece of meat, are you going to give him a scorpion, something that could hurt him? Absolutely not. So if you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your kids, how much more our Father in heaven that has no evil in Him? Amen? So, so bless God, even during that time, He had not given up on me. So I started catching some of it. So I asked the chaplain, when I started walking down the thing, I said, can I have another one of those New Testaments? And he's like, I already gave you one. What happened to yours? You don't want to know. Can I have another one? So he gave me another one, and I didn't know where to start reading and that kind of stuff. I guess 9 out of 10 preachers will tell you to begin with the book of John. Myself, I opened up that New Testament. First book is Matthew. That's where I started. Okay? By the sermon, I'll tell you what, that changed my life. Jesus made Himself real to me and started, you know what? It doesn't matter where they had me locked up. There is no place, Romans 8, there is no height, nor depth, nor anything that can separate you from the love of God. Amen? No matter where they'd stick me in them places, there's the hole down in there, which is one of the nastiest places. And I guess some penitentiaries, maybe the hole's nicer than others. I did the majority of my time in Soledad, and believe me, the hole there is not nice. It is so dark you can't see your hand like this in front of your face. And so what you do, hopefully, Lord willing, none of you guys will ever find yourself in that situation. There's a neat game that convicts come up with, and we call it Find the Button. And what that is in the hole, initially, you're naked when you go in there, but you get some of your clothes back as your behavior. Well, you take your shirt and you tear a button off your shirt. And you'd flip it like this over your shoulder, and then go like this along your cell looking for that button on the floor. It sounds funny, but that's how you entertain yourself and keep yourself, even in there. The Lord was with me. They could not, even in a place they call that where flies don't land. Even where flies don't land, there's one that sticks with you closer than a brother. Amen? Now, getting back to, I was in jail at the time, and they had me on 2 counts of attempted murder. Now, my sentencing date they had set up was like November 12th or something like that. It was coming up pretty close. This was early November. And again, a thing that I don't want to go too much into detail, but there was a way that you can get pretty much anything in jail or prison. And at that time, someone was sending me in some, they say, drugs in the mail. And so I was doing them. Last thing you want to do is get spun out in jail because there's nothing to do. Well, our bunks were made out of metal stuff, kind of like that rail up there. And so I'm laying there on my bunk, and I'm kicking on the bunk, and one of these little bars goes, "Burr." And and I breaking that off, working it, and it breaks off. And my first thing was like, I was going to make a weapon out of it. Now, in San Diego, the jail, which is the biggest building in the center of town, it sticks out like this in a flat city, okay? Well, it was built on rollers because it's Southern California. And so in an earthquake, the building would shimmy and shake, but no real damage. Well, one of them, it had come off one of them rollers, so it made cracks all up through the walls of the jail. Now, with this little piece of metal, I found that the wall, because I originally was going to use it just to scratch some stuff in the wall, and a chunk fell, and I'm like,